Morning everybody, my name is Daniel and today I'm going to go through my entire DVD, Blu-ray, VHS, 4K collection. Just to let you know, all these piles are only half, so if you're not ready for a long video, well, you make the decisions necessary to benefit your life, but I'm going to kind of stop the pleasantries and just go right on ahead into it. I'm going to start off with TV. I've only got two series, but they're two series I love. Avatar: The Last Airbender on Blu-ray, the whole series. My favorite show of all time. I think it's absolutely perfect. And my favorite piece of Spider-Man ever. Spectacular Spider-Man, 2 seasons, woefully short. I think this just was the best version of Spider-Man ever, better than Tobey Maguire and Garfield and Holland and all that. I'm just going to move some stacks in here. You have no idea how long it took me to alphabetize this so I can make sense of it. We've got 12 Angry Men, the Sidney Lumet drama, which is required viewing. Also required viewing, 2001, A Space Odyssey. I need to upgrade this from DVD to something else. I really like 300. I really like 300 Rise of an Empire. I think it's got good world building in it. So yeah, these two movies are actually pretty good. Went to Walmart, 50 horror classics, a bunch of older stuff. So you got your Night of Living Dead, House on Haunted Hill, Carnival of Souls. There's a lot that's in here, and it's in a nice package that you can just reference. The ABCs of Death, a fun horror anthology based on like 26 directors getting a letter of the alphabet, and each of their shorts that they're assigned, like they have to make a short that works with death but starts with the letter of that alphabet. Anyway, it's creative and I really like it. One of my favorite movies of last decade, About Time, a fantastic romantic comedy. It's got Donald Gleason, Bill Nighy, Rachel McAdams, and Margot Robbie before Wolf of Wall Street. Adaptation, I haven't seen this, but I've heard it's really, really good. It's got Nicolas Cage playing twins and directed by Spike Jonze, and I really like her, so I'm going to check that movie out. The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, one of Ashley from the Movie Oracle's favorite movies. I've yet to see it. I will. Great drag road trip movie. One of the best parodies ever made with a really cool lenticular cover, Airplane. Self-explanatory, hilarious film. I really love the steelbook for Aladdin, the classic 2D one. I got it on 4K. It's one of those movies from your childhood. Doing this, like organizing my movies, I found that I had a bunch of duplicates, so I kept the newest copy of Alien. Again, required viewing. I think it's the best sci-fi horror film of all time. Hot take, I'm not a big Aliens fan, but I am a really big Alien Covenant fan. I think this movie just kind of took everything that made Alien good, but also added a couple things to it. And yeah, I really dug it. I've yet to see Almost Famous, though I've heard it's pretty damn good. Cameron Crowe movie, so we'll check that out eventually. Ridley Scott's American Gangster with Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe. I saw this in middle school with my dad, and there's a scene with like topless women like running a drug like lab or whatever, and it was like a life-changing moment for me. I don't know why. It was like one of those like I'm with my dad and it's a men thing. American Graffiti, directed by George Lucas, a really fun kind of slice-of-life 50s movie, and as a big fan of that kind of architecture and Art Deco, this movie friggin' kills. Speaking of Art Deco, American Hustle, oh my god, the best David O. Russell movie, hands down. Just, if you want to see a bunch of great actors do fun work, watch out for Jeremy Renner in this, really underrated. Just a great American 70s epic. Saw The American President in high school. I have not seen Dave, but The American President was a really cool romance that kind of humanized the president, written by Aaron Sorkin, supposedly the inspiration for The West Wing, one of my all-time favorite TV shows. American Psycho, have yet to see this, but again, I've heard it's required viewing, so at least I have it. From one of my favorite directors, Alejandro González Iñárritu, the guy who did Birdman and The Revenant, Amores Perros is his first film described as the Mexican Pulp Fiction. I've yet to see it, but again, I have it because I need it. My wife picked this up, Amusement. It's not a really good movie. It's kind of like 3 women end up being trapped by this guy, and there's a reason that he traps them, and I don't know. Movie's not really great, but I have it. I actually kind of love the Angry Birds movie. I thought it was kind of charming and the jokes worked for me. Some of it was pretty dark. And yeah, better than I expected. Annihilation. So good. What a great horror movie. What a great mind bender. What a great follow-up to Ex Machina, the Alex Garland movie. If you haven't seen it, please do. Also, underrated movie. If you're a World War II fan, if you like spy movies, Anthropoid with Cillian Murphy and Jamie Dornan. This movie rules. For a long time, I thought Woody Allen directed Ants, but he didn't. He just stars in it, and I think it's pretty bold. And if you were to compare this with A Bug's Life, I definitely think this is the winner. It's just got a lot more in its mind. Look at this cover. Oh my god, look at this art for Apocalypse Now. I've yet to see it. I want to watch this when I get a 4K player. I haven't gotten one yet, but I feel like one of these movies you have to watch on the best thing possible. But yeah, that artwork is great. Arachnophobia, really fun movie. If you've got a kid who's just entering like PG-13 horror, this is definitely a good starter. Are You Scared is a Saw ripoff. It is not a good Saw ripoff. It's like the backwash of Saw. And even then I didn't really like Saw. But yeah, I have it. Have yet to see Argo in the Town, but again, you gotta beef up your collections of like award-winning movies somehow, so I have it. I really love Armageddon. It is a stupid freaking movie. It is one of the best Michael Bay movies ever made. Arrival. Oh my god, what a mind bender. I think this is my favorite Villeneuve movie. I'm not a big Villeneuve fan, but god, this movie just... It's perfect sci-fi. And it's different kinds of sci-fi, you know? This is an underrated one. At Eternity's Gate, Willem Dafoe got the Academy Award nom for this. He's playing Vincent van Gogh, and I think this movie just gets in Van Gogh's head in a way that really, like, elevates a typical biopic. I don't know. This movie is really underrated. You should go watch it. Ooh, one of the ones from my childhood, Atlantis: The Lost Empire. I had the PS1 game for this. Oh, this was such a good movie. This movie needs a live-action retouch. Atomic Blonde, great fighting, slick cinematography. It's just a good old-fashioned kick-ass spy movie. Audition. This movie will creep you the hell out. If you're, like, scared of relationships, you should not watch this movie. It's fucking badass. Self-explanatory. I don't like Age of Ultron. I don't like Infinity War. I love Endgame. How to get the Steelbook. I mean, self-explanatory. And to finish off this stack, The Aviator, the very first movie my wife showed me. And I fell in love with it because I realized she was a Martin Scorsese fan, and I'm a Martin Scorsese fan too, so this is always going to remind me of the times that I started falling in love with my wife. The way of the future. 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 Alright, next pile. Oh god, we are going into the B's, I believe. Larry from LC Screen Talk gifted me this version of the Babadook when... apparently the Babadook is like a bisexual icon now. It's kind of been co-opted in social media for that. And so I think Scream... is it Scream Factory? Yeah, Scream Factory released this limited edition release, and I really like it. Again, really scary horror movie. It's just kind of a great ghost story. Alejandro González Iñárritu. I have not seen it, but because Birdman's one of my favorite movies of all time, I feel obligated to watch every single movie he's ever done. So, Babbitt. I'm going to donate this one. I might sell it back to Movie Trading Company. This is terrible. If you guys are talking up in arms about Brahms, The Boy 2, or whatever, trust me, if you watch this, you will think Brahms is Citizen Kane. I'm a Batman fan. You gotta have the original 4. It's, again, self-explanatory. All of them are good in their own weird ways. Beautiful Mind, haven't seen this one, but again, it's one of those that, like, you gotta watch it. It was an Oscar-nominated movie, you know? One of my favorite directors is Richard Linklater. I've yet to see Before Sunrise and Before Sunset, but it's one of those things that, like, I love Richard Linklater movies, therefore, I gotta at least watch this one. So, I have it. I kinda dig The Belko Experiment. It's not the best movie in the world, but if you're looking for a really cool, like, 90 minutes of just gore and Lord of the Flies stuff, I think you'll dig this one. Now, this is a really underrated movie. Belle, I think, is fantastic, directed by Ama Asante. This kind of introduced Gugu Mbatha Raw into my life, and I think she's never been better than here, which is a shame. They need to give her more movies, because she's so good. And if you're, like, a fan of, like, British period dramas, but you want something a little different, you can get this movie, and it's great. Speaking of Richard Linklater, Bernie. This is the best Jack Black has ever been. This is the best Jack Black performance, period. Over School of Rock. Fight me. The Big Short, it is terrifying, it is hilarious, it is the best thing Adam McKay has ever done. And, oh my god, just look at the cast. Look at the cast. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. When I started asking my dad what movies I should watch, he introduced these to me on his Netflix account, and they are staples of my childhood. One of my favorite movies of all time, if not sneaking up to be my favorite movie of all time, Birdman. I think this movie is just excellent. I can watch it every single day for the rest of my life and never get sick of it. And yeah, it's basically about that little voice in your head that says you suck, or you're the greatest thing on planet Earth. It's a really complicated time being a human being. Come on, man, Black Dynamite. You gotta own Black Dynamite. It's fantastic. I'm a big Scott Cooper fan. I really like Black Mass. I really like Johnny Depp's performance in this. I'm a big fan of just, like, good gangster movies, and this is a really top-notch gangster movie for me. Wakanda Forever! You gotta get the lenticular cover that's, like, all shiny. This movie rules. I mean, it's Black friggin' Panther. It rules. Watched this a couple of weeks ago. I dig it. I'm a Darren Aronofsky fan. And I really love the cinematography in this. I love the camera operating, how close it gets. I love Natalie Portman's performance and how she goes crazy. This movie is pretty great. It's like Whiplash for ballet. Black Klansman, Spike Lee joint. It's a good film. Just a straightforward, badass film. Watch it. Blair Witch Project. What is it? Found footage. I know it's kind of mixed, but I still think this shit is effective. One of my favorite movies ever, and my very first Criterion DVD, The Blob from the 1958, if I'm correct? Yes, 1958, starring Steve McQueen in his very first lead role. And if you wanted to fall in love with the 50s, if you wanted a different version of, like, teenagers being the heroes for once, this movie is just absolute perfection. A bunch of cool special effects if you're paying attention. If you especially get the Criterion version, there's a bunch of bonus features. It's just good stuff. I'd also recommend the Cinemassacres video, Blobtown, if you want more history on how this movie has survived towards today. Blue Collar Comedy Tour, the movie, and Blue Collar Comedy Tour rides again. If I will find Blue Collar Comedy Tour one for the road, I will. These guys just make me laugh every single time. I've watched these movies like 15 times. Have yet to see Blue Valentine, but I've heard it's fantastic, so yeah, I picked it up. My wife likes the Boogeyman series, especially Boogeyman 2. I think Boogeyman 2 is my favorite, even though it's like a Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors ripoff. But, yeah, I mean, they're decent horror movies, I guess. Boondock Saints rules. This movie just I love it. I love it. Boondock Saints 2, technically my friend Barnyard let me borrow this, but he's never asked for it back, so eventually I think I'm going to have to watch this. This movie's good. Shut up. This movie's actually pretty friggin' good and charming as hell. I'm a bigger fan of DreamWorks than I think most people are. Speaking of Richard Linklater, Boyhood, really, really good movie. This was one that just kind of knocked my socks off. It's one of those movies that, like, as soon as it's over, I had to go to the bar and just sit down and write about it. And yeah, it's honestly one of a kind. A movie that we're likely not to really ever see something like again. Martin Scorsese fan, so I gotta have Bringing Out the Dead. I've yet to see this, but this will eventually complete my Scorsese watch. This movie, if you haven't seen Bronson, this movie is tied with Locke for Tom Hardy's best performance. This is playing this criminal, Britain's most violent criminal, and Tom Hardy just goes into it. It's directed by Nicholas Winding Refn, and he's the guy who's done stuff like the Pusher trilogy and, what's it called? Neon Demon, another movie that I have somewhere around here. Yeah, Bronson, this movie is just... It's intense, it's gorgeous, it's a huge character study. Like, if you haven't seen this movie and you're a Tom Hardy fan, please do yourself a favor and watch it. This is an elegant movie, Brooklyn. It's where I fell in love with Saoirse Ronan, and this movie is just pleasant. It's a Sunday movie. You sit down, you watch it, and it's just calm. I don't know, there's something gorgeous and romantic about this with a capital R. Cabin in the Woods, one of the smartest horror comedies of all time. I love Joss Whedon. I love Bradley Whitford in this, and Chris Hemsworth is pretty cool in this. I don't know, it's a good genre bender. Call Me By Your Name, also a really good movie. It's got this cool kind of like, yeah, it's another Sunday movie. I don't know, there's something about like really relaxing atmospheres in films that I really, really like, and this one just makes me want to spend a summer in Italy, falling in love and listening to Psychedelic Furs. So, I like Bennett Miller's movies. This is the only one of his, I think, this is the only one I've yet to see, Capote, but I got all of Bennett Miller's movies just on a blind whim, and thankfully I've really liked Foxcatcher and I really like Moneyball. So, this is next. I really like Captain America the First Avenger, more than most people. I didn't like this at first, and yet I grew to love it. So, these two movies are really, really solid. No Civil War? Yes, no Civil War. That movie sucks. Captain Marvel, it's weird. It's super, super, super weird, and for that, I respect the hell out of it. Carrie, stone cold classic. Just, if you're getting into horror movies, required viewing. Charlie Bartlett, super underrated. I don't think many people have seen this. I mean, you got Anton Yelchin, Kat Dennings, Drake makes an appearance in this sucker, and Robert Downey Jr. being his Robert Downey Jr.-ist. I think this movie really, really rules, and if you're kind of like, if you're starting to get into high school, I think this is a great movie to watch. Stone Cold classic, Charlie Brown Christmas. It's like one of the most perfect things about Christmas ever. This is one of my wife grabbed, Children of Men. I've yet to see it, but I really like Alfonso Cuarón's movies, and so this is one that's on the list. Super under talked about John Carpenter movie. We talk about Halloween, The Thing, and Escape from New York, but this movie tackles toxic masculinity in a way that I don't think had been tackled in that same way at this time. And this movie mixes that kind of commentary with great genre fun. This movie just rules. If you haven't seen Christine, definitely watch it. A Christmas Story is my favorite movie of all time. Watch it. It's really good. And to finish off this second pile, Chronicle, a movie that I thought I would really like. I don't really like it at all. I don't know, it didn't really work for me. I don't really like Ding Dong, but I got it. Third pile. third pile. Oh, Jesus God. Okay, these next three. So I supported the Cinema Snob's Kickstarter for one of his movies, and as a result, I got these three. And they're just kind of like clip shows of kind of like uncut and uncensored versions, like I guess him making fun of certain movies. So yeah, I got all these three. Nudies, Rudies, and Crudies, The Cinema Snob Punches Nazis, and Unerotic Fantasies, all uncut and uncensored. So I guess there's penis in those. Cloverfield. This movie was something, like, as a teenager, a young teen, this movie just blew my mind. I fell in love with this immediately. Like, best trailer I think I've ever seen. Scorsese, Color of Money. I've yet to see it, but it's a Scorsese, so I gotta watch it. Con Air. Have yet to see it, but my wife grabbed it. She loves this movie, and so eventually we're gonna watch this. I have The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2, two of the best ghost stories of the last decade. I think Conjuring 2 actually, like, rules, like it's one of the best I've ever seen. But both of these movies are just fantastic spook house horror that harkens to the 70s while not feeling kind of beholden to them. Coraline, good movie. I'm a bigger fan of Laika's other work, but my wife showed this one to me recently, and I think it's like a solid little fairy tale. I don't know why my wife bought this movie. We've never seen it, but it's got John Corbett in it, and I love John Corbett in anything, so eventually we'll watch it. On VHS, one of my wife's very favorite movies, The Craft. I don't like this movie. We saw it on 35mm a couple of months ago. I didn't like it. I liked it even less then. But if you're into goth culture, you owe so much. If you're into Hot Topic culture, you owe so much to this movie. Bought this for $1 at Walgreens. Haven't seen it yet, but it's got people I like in it, so we'll see. I need to get a better copy of Creed. I really don't like this cover, but this movie just... There's a guy in the middle of my early screening that I cut in front of 200 people in accident to get in front of. I ended up like blending in accidentally with this Mexican family. And there's this guy in front of us whenever Creed was getting ready to fight him. He just yells, "You get him, Creed!" And the entire theater laughed. It's one of the most fun, crowd-rousing experiences I've ever had in a movie theater. This movie's killer. God, required viewing for any horror fan. Creep Show. Stephen King, George Romero joining forces with a Tales of the Crypt anthology vibe. It's perfect. I'm a huge Guillermo del Toro fan, so Crimson Peak is the one that I think I was, like, introduced to as, like, oh, this is Guillermo del Toro, the auteur. And I just fell in love with this. This is the movie that made me actually like Jessica Chastain. I always thought she was kind of boring before. But yeah, this movie rules. I found the Criterion of this for $6 at Half Price Books. Chronos, Del Toro's very first debut. I've yet to see it, but I mean, Criterion, $6. You can't go wrong. Cujo, I really like this movie. However, there's like, I think, the last 5 minutes are like a little bit too much. I think the sort of like double jump scare at the end of this movie doesn't quite work, but I think the rest of this movie is pitch friggin' perfect. This movie rules. Scary as hell, totally believable. We're gonna go with the Dark Knight trilogy here. Ironically, I think the only one I have on Blu-ray is Dark Knight Rises. Look at that, holographic. But yeah, best Batman trilogy. I mean, these movies are just pretty damn good. I'm not the biggest fan of Dark Knight Rises. I remember when it came out, I was kind of disappointed about it. I still gotta watch it again. Eventually, I will upgrade these to 4K, but those movies cost like $60, and these total, I think, were like $12. So, good movies. Dark Knight's obviously the best. I really like Dark Tower. This movie makes no sense, but this movie's kind of fun. You have forgotten the faces of your fathers. Idris Elba's perfect, man. I also really like Darkest Hour. I know some people are just like, oh, it's Gary Oldman in old man makeup. But look, after like a solid year of listening to Trump, listening to Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill act like a real leader should was just the kind of salve I needed for my heart's wound, you know? I'm a big Sam Raimi fan, so Darkman is essential viewing. I've yet to see it, but I mean, it's Sam Raimi. You cannot go wrong. You just can't. Oh my god, talk about required viewing for horror fans. Dawn of the Dead. My wife got this for me for my birthday, and this movie is just... it's the best of the Dead trilogy. I absolutely love it. You know what I don't love? Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. I think it's too extra. But, you know what I really love? Land of the Dead. Land of the Dead is like my third favorite. It would probably be like Dawn, Night, what is it? Dawn, Night, Land, and then Day. I have yet to see Diary or Survival. But yeah, Land of the Dead I think is a killer movie. It's really smart. It kind of takes the zombie genre in a new area. Richard Linklater movie, Dazed and Confused. I'm not crazy about this movie as much as other people are, but I still think it's pretty damn good. Personally, I like Everybody Wants Some better, but you're going to hear me talk about that in the list. Oh no, he's getting naked! Hell yeah. You didn't think you were going to get a striptease with this video, huh? Dead Poet Society. They showed this in high school, and this just blew my mind. It's the very first Peter Weir movie I saw. It's got Ethan Hawke in it. It's got Robin Williams in it. It's just a really powerful coming of age, like the poetry. Oh, Captain, my Captain. Like, there's so many great moments in this. It's just perfect. Another hot take. I don't like Deadpool. I really love Deadpool 2. I think this is everything that Deadpool should have been. I think it's more absurd. I think it's got a tighter story. I think the characters are better in this one. And yeah, Deadpool 2 is friggin' great. Deepwater Horizon, surprisingly really good movie. I didn't expect much. I don't think I had seen it. Oh no, I really did like Peter Berg's Lone Survivor. That's somewhere down the line over here. But yeah, Deepwater Horizon just kind of took that formula of, like, I guess, good execute. Like, it's a muscly action movie, but it's not stupid about it, and there's real emotion in there. And so when you're looking at the trilogy that the Bergs did, which is Lone Survivor, this movie, and Patriots Day, you get a really good, solid collection of action movies with really strong emotion in it based on true events. And it's good stuff. The Departed is a good movie. I'm not crazy about it, but it's a Scorsese movie, and it's pretty damn good. I mean, it's Jack Nicholson as a gangster. What else do you need? A movie that I've yet to see but I've heard is amazing is The Descent, this really scary kind of spelunking movie with creatures in it. I heard it's good. I have no idea what Desperation is. This is from my wife, and she's a really big Stephen King fan, so eventually I'm going to watch this. So I bought The Devil Wears Prada for a project in college that I did, comparing the book to the movie, and it came with 27 dresses. Alright, The Devil Wears Prada is one of my favorite movies of the aughts. Like, Emily Blunt deserved an Academy Award for supporting actress. 27 Dresses is okay. The best parts in it are like Jason Marsden and Benny and the Jets, but I still think the sister was kind of a bitch. So yeah, take my advice with a grain of salt. One of the best action movies ever made, Die Hard. You do not get better than this movie, period, point blank. So, the guy that directed At Eternity's Gate, this is his, like, major movie before that. Yeah, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. I just liked At Eternity's Gate so much that I feel like I gotta watch this movie. Vincent, what's his name? Julian Schnabel. Whoops, almost screwed up his name. First mention of Quentin Tarantino in this, Django Unchained. I'm a big Tarantino fan. I like Django Unchained a lot. I love Samuel Jackson's performance in it. I think, honestly, he probably should have gotten some supporting nods. Leonardo DiCaprio does a great performance in this, too. Pretty much everybody except Christoph Waltz, I thought should have gotten the supporting actor nod, but hey, that's just me. This Criterion, I'm in love with. Do the Right Thing. Spike Lee joint, the very first one I saw, I think it's absolutely perfect. It's a searing commentary on race in America. But if I can just show this off. So, cover. Look at that. Look at the artwork. And then you've got the booklet on the inside about the movie. And then, if I can take out the discs, because there are a bunch of discs in this, look at that artwork. It's glorious, and I absolutely love it. This is the very first DVD that I bought after moving into this apartment to kind of celebrate the move, and it just was perfect. I think I got it at Barnes & Noble's, like, biannual half off for the Criterion Collection, so I got this for, like, $25 when it should have been, like, $50, and it's just perfect. I like Doctor Strange a lot more than most. I'm a really big fan that it's like a... I think it's a really great... what was it? One of my coworkers said that this was a great hero's journey stuffed into a good superhero movie. And I couldn't agree anymore. I saw this sucker in like 3D IMAX in the big IMAX theater in Dallas, and it was just an experience to behold, man. This movie rules. Don John, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's directorial debut. It's a really funny movie. I don't remember it too well, but I remember liking it, and I like the performances in it. This is definitely one I think I've got to rewatch, see how it holds up. Dude, okay, in my mind, there is a fantastic trilogy of movies that kind of, like, play with the goofy horror hits a small American town, and it's The Blob from 1958, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and Dr. Giggles. This movie is stupid, this movie is hilarious, and I think, you know, as far as a slasher movie with a comedic bent goes, I think it's actually pretty good. It's pretty good. Okay. Moving on to the fourth pile. Oh, God. Oh, I feel like I'm going to drop all of these. Oh, merciful Jesus. Oh, God. It looks like it's about to fall. Oh, my God. Anybody want to take bets on how long it's going to take one of these stacks to fall? Other required viewing, Doctor Strangelove, and Or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Stanley Kubrick movie. It's required viewing. Fantastic Cold War satire. You really just don't get better than it. Nicholas Winding Refn's best movie, Drive. This movie just is propulsion. It's character. It's drama. It's action. And it's just style. And everything is just pitch perfect. It's like if you close your eyes and imagine neon, you think of Ryan Gosling driving through LA streets. It's just a great crime story. Dunkirk. I know some people think it's overrated, but this movie just caught me, and I love how it masterfully controls time and uses that as a weapon against you. I like that this movie shows war from the heights of heights to where all this damage looks like you're attacking ants, but like really they're humans. They're just that small compared to the chaos that's all around them. Oh, this movie just, it's perfect, I think. Saw that on film, 70mm IMAX at the same like theater I was talking about for Doctor Strange, and that was an experience. Just hearing that reel going, that was so good. Underrated, is this an underrated movie? I don't feel like we talk about Easy A enough. I don't think we talk about how this movie is just a fantastic coming-of-age film, and at the beginning of the decade, that's the best coming-of-age, like, decade. The 2010s, I think, beat the 80s for, like, the best coming-of-age movies to date, and I think Easy A definitely kicked it off and just gave Emma Stone the... Without this movie, there is no Emma Stone, you know? Speaking of coming-of-age movies, one that was in the middle of this that was severely underrated and should have gotten more Academy attention, The Edge of 17. I think it's Haley Steinfeld's best performance. I think the direction by Kelly Fremont Craig is pitch perfect. You got a bunch of cool people in here, like I think Blake Jenner's in this. Blake Jenner, and Woody Harrelson and Haley Lou Richardson. There's a bunch of people that are like bubbling up in the industry now that were kind of first featured on this, and I think this is just a honest and kind of heartbreaking movie. It's really, really good. Classic Tim Burton, Edward Scissorhands. I mean, you really don't get much better than this movie. Back to coming of age, 8th grade. Oh my god, if this movie does not capture the zeitgeist. And it's so strange because it's coming from like a 6-foot-something, 30-year-old white guy, but he totally understands what it's like to live in this generation, and especially as a teenage girl, especially in a world where your life online and your life in the real world are now one and the same. This is terrifying as it is heartwarming, as it is relatable to everybody's experience in some way. This movie's fantastic. Speaking of fantastic, The Emperor's New Groove. I love this movie. It was one of my favorite movies for a long time, and I just think, as far as 2D classic Disney animation goes, this is the closest we're really going to get to Looney Tunes. Dude, Enter the Void is a drug trip through death. It's 3 hours long. I've never seen a movie like it, and this movie rules. Gaspar Noé rocks. Have yet to see Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but I've heard it's one of those movies that you just have to see. And Michel Gondry directed the video for Foo Fighters' Everlong, which is my favorite song of all time. So there's something to that. Oh, and we're just gonna do this now. One of my favorite series of all time, the Evil Dead series. I have yet to see Army of Darkness. I know, it's a great movie. I have to see it. But the other three, Evil Dead, I remember my dad, like, convincing my dad to let me rent this thing off of Netflix, even though it's unrated, and when I was like 11, and it was the coolest sleepover I ever had. Evil Dead 2 is just Evil Dead, but a lot better. It's basically Evil Dead, the Sam Raimi version, like the really big Sam Raimi version. And I think the Evil Dead remake just kills. I think this movie's fantastic. It's one of my favorite movies of the decade, clearly. And, of course, Army of Darkness is going to be great. I haven't even seen it. I know it's going to be great. This is one of those, like, series that I just think is absolute perfection. Horror comedy at, like, its goriest, its crudest, its lewdest, makes crazy stuff. Ex Machina, saw this sucker 3 times in theaters because I just fell in love with it that hard. And this movie's just elegant, gorgeous, scary, and a mind trip. Alex Garland is a genius. The Exorcism of Emily Rose, directed by Scott Derrickson, starring Jennifer Carpenter, made me actually believe that Jennifer Carpenter was possessed by the devil, so I had to go ask my dad about if demons were actually real. This movie's PG-13. Watch it! And of course you can't have The Exorcism of Emily Rose without The Exorcist, one of the best horror movies of all time. It's kind of self-explanatory. This movie's perfect. Eye in the Sky. This is a really cool thriller about, like, the drone warfare that goes on and the decisions that goes into it. It's got a great cast. You've got Alan Rickman, and the last time I saw him in a movie, Helen Mirren. You've got, what's that guy's name? Barkhad Abdi from Captain Phillips. You've got Aaron Paul in this. It's just a really well-crafted thriller about this kind of warfare that's pretty new to us, but is also really scary when you think about how impersonal that can be. This movie makes, flying a drone and bombing a place really human and personal, and it's a heart-wrencher, man. The ending to this, it made my wife cry. She didn't cry at everything. You know who does cry at everything? Me. You know why? Because The Farewell is like one of the best movies that I saw last year. This was my favorite movie for a really long time before Parasite kicked it off, like at the very tail end of the year. But I think this movie, if you've ever been someone who grew up kind of in 2 countries, if you ever had a really good relationship with your grandma, this movie will break your heart. And I think Lulu Wang is a genius. And I can't wait to hopefully catch her at South by Southwest later this year. These movies are great. I will hear no word to the contrary. Is this the same artwork? Yes, it is. Fast and the Furious is pretty good. Too Fast, Too Furious is terrible. Tokyo Drift is underrated as hell. Fast and Furious sucks. Fast 5 is really good. Fast and Furious 6 sucks. Furious 7 is good. And The Fate of the Furious, as ridiculous as it is, because Jason Statham fights with that baby, it's the best friggin' movie of the 8. These movies are just, like, absurdity personified in a film. And I love them. Alright. Fault in Our Stars. Again, we're going coming of age, kind of romance movies, but I think this movie, of like the teenagers fall in love because they're terminally ill, this movie I think was the first and the best. I don't know if it's really the first, don't at me if it is. If it's not. The Favorite, this movie just fires on all cylinders. Directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. I mean, Olivia Colman, Rachel Weisz, and Emma Stone in a movie together is already perfect, and then you add Nicholas Hoult into there, who really should have gotten Best Supporting Actor consideration. I think this movie should have swept the Oscars. This movie is just a great, like, how do I explain this? It's kind of like Real Housewives, but put in a period piece. It's a super catty fight movie with, like, lesbians and the threats of war and a lot of shit talking in the most elegant way possible. If you like being a sassy motherfucker, this is your movie. Fear.com. My wife picked this movie thinking it was another movie, and we watched it for about 5 minutes and then turned it off. Likely we're probably gonna donate this one to the library. Fearless. I have no idea what this is about. Apparently this is directed by Peter Weir, but, oh no, now I know this. Jeff Bridges is about to go into Jeff Bridges survives a plane crash and he's trying to, like, live his life better, so to speak. Something about just reading the back of this was interesting, and Peter Weir directed Dead Poets Society, so I'm into this. Fences. This movie really knocked my socks off. I really loved it. Just Denzel Washington and Viola Davis have perfect chemistry, and this story is really intense. It feels like a play, but it perfectly kind of makes the play cinematic, gives it a little bit more boundaries to play with, and I just think the performances kill this movie. It's really great. Required viewing. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Amazing coming-of-age comedy. It's just one of the best teen movies ever made. Fight Club. I'm not crazy about this one. I am crazy about this Steelbook. It looks really good. But I'm a big David Fincher fan. I don't think this is one of his best, but I actually really like it. I think Brad Pitt is the one that steals the show for me in this movie. I've yet to see The Fighter, but I'm a David O. Russell fan, so I eventually gotta watch this at some point. This is an interesting idea for a movie. Robin Williams plays this editor who's tasked with, like, making the in memoriam video for everybody's lives in a world where everybody's lives, like, are recorded every single minute, so he has to go through, like, everybody's footage of their entire life and make, like, a greatest hits clip, but then he finds some fucked up shit and he ends up going on the run as a thriller. It's a really weird concept. I've yet to see it, and I really hope it works. If you love Mousetrap, Rube Goldberg machines, and gore, Final Destination is your movie. If you like shit that is absurd, you will like the Final Destination movies. It doesn't really matter which one you pick, but, you know, just watch them. One of the best movies I've ever seen, one of the defining movies of my childhood, Finding Nemo. I remember the first time I saw this, it really just kind of, like, opened my mind as to what animation could do. Really great movie. Also a really great movie, Florida Project. My God, Roger Ebert called movies empathy machines. This one is, like, one of the best and brightest of the last 10 years. This movie, I think, was really robbed of a Best Picture nomination. Fluke. It is precious. It is adorable. A guy, like, gets hit by a car, gets reincarnated into the body of a dog, and he's given a second chance to be, like, a good person. And yeah, this movie is really charming. It's 90s, it's goofy, it's a good movie. I've yet to see The Fly. I've seen the original movie, but David Cronenberg is a guy I'm starting to get really interested in, so eventually I'll watch this. My Foo Fighters is my favorite band, so I've got their documentary, Back and Forth, directed around the time they did Wasting Light, and then I've got the mini-series of Sonic Highways, that mini-series where they kind of like filmed each song of that album in a different city inspired by the music landscape of each city. Both are really good watches. I need to get Sound City, too. Dave Grohl directed that about the studio. Bennett Miller strikes again. Foxcatcher. This movie is a downer, but I think it's a brilliant downer, and I don't think people give Channing Tatum enough credit for being really good at acting in this movie. We've yet to see Frank and Weenie, but my wife really loves this, and eventually I'm going to have to take her up on her offer to go see it. This movie's underrated as hell. Free Fire, you got like Charlton Copley, Armie Hammer, Brie Larson, Cillian Murphy, Jack Rayner, and all these great people locked in a warehouse just shooting at each other for 90 minutes, full of weird, quirky characters and a bunch of awesome action. This movie is just damn near perfect. I was the only one in the theater for this, and I think that is a crime. And I think we're gonna end off this stack with the Friday the 13th series, a series that is inconsistent for me, but ones that I really like. So, of course, I gotta have the first Friday the 13th. I don't have the second one yet, but I really like Part 3 in 3D, because, you know, it's Part 3 in 3D. Crispin Glover dances in Friday the 13th, the final chapter. My favorite Friday the 13th movie is actually Part 6, Jason Lives. I think it's like the first one that really like embraces the kind of ridiculousness of Jason and has the coolest kills. And then side by side are a movie that I think is really underrated and a movie that I absolutely cannot stand. So I can't stand Jason X, but I think Jason Goes to Hell is unfairly maligned in the same way that like Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is maligned. It's totally taking a different approach, but I think there's enough cool characters in there and interesting ideas that it actually, in the long run, works. Okay, another pile. There's so many DVDs and Blu-rays that I have to like push out of the way now in order to get room to move more DVDs and Blu-rays. Oh Lord. I told you this was going to be a long video. Fruitvale Station, Ryan Coogler's directorial debut, and this movie is just, it's really perfect. I think it's just this encapsulation of this guy's final days on Earth, and you really grow to empathize with this dude, and you know kind of where it goes to. If you know the story of Oscar Grant, you know where this movie leads, but you're not surprised as to how much you're going to feel when it actually does happen. I think this movie's glorious. Full Metal Jacket, I think this is the scariest war movie ever made. It's just the bleakest and the most nihilistic in my mind, but it's also freaking hilarious, and of course Stanley Kubrick directed it. Speaking of good war movies, Fury. I think this movie's underrated. I really liked Fury. I liked the cast in it, I liked the action, I liked the way David Ayer got really grimy with it and played around with tanks. I think this movie kills. I am a big Gabriel Iglesias fan, so Gabriel Iglesias filming his special in Hawaii, Aloha Fluffy. Just, this guy is awesome. Straightforward. If you want to laugh, awesome. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, Gangs in New York. It's one of my favorite Scorsese movies, and it's the one that really made me fall in love with him as a kid. I think I like stayed up at midnight, saw this movie, and just stuck with it all the way through. It's like my first 3-hour movie that I was like, oh my god, this movie's great. Yeah, this movie's freaking great. Leonardo DiCaprio, Daniel Day-Lewis is just perfect. Speaking of perfect, but in a different way, Geostorm is like one of those movies that I just fell in love with because it is so ridiculous and it makes me laugh all the time. It's so bad and it's so good. Disastrous. Get Out, Jordan Peele's debut. I think it's a good horror movie. I'm a bigger fan of Us, and we'll see that later down the line, but yeah, as far as directorial debuts go, this is a banger. My wife got this one. We saw Ghost Rider together. I kind of dig it. It's not a great movie, but I dig it. We've yet to see Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. I hope it's good. I don't know. Maybe. Now, this movie's underrated. The Gift. This thriller by Joel Edgerton about this, like, creepy guy that gets back, that kind of, like, meets up with his high school friend and starts slowly, like, invading his way into his life, and especially his wife's life. Rebecca Hall is fantastic in this. Joel Edgerton, who directed and wrote this, is creepy as hell. This movie just... it gets under your skin, and it's the only time that I've heard, like, an audience over the age of 40 shriek like little people. Children? Yeah, children. What is wrong with me? It's early. Girl Interrupted, directed by James Mangold, the guy whose films I really like, and I actually really like this one. This is a solid, well-made memoir about being in a psych ward, and just, yeah, it's got a great cast. Elizabeth Moss is in this. Angelina Jolie is good in this. I like Winona Ryder in this. There's just a lot of people I like in it. This movie kills. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night is one of the best vampire movies of the last decade. Also, let me show you this book. Oh my god. Look at this artwork. There's like a comic book. Look at the comic book that's in here. It's so good. Just, this movie is such a stylish, messed up, kind of like vampire western in Iran, and oh my god, if you, again, talk about, like, I think debuts, Girl Walks Home Alone at Night is just perfection. I really like Glass, and I really love this steelbook that was drawn by Alex Ross, a famous comic artist. And yeah, this movie, I saw the trailer, I knew it was going to be ridiculous, and I appreciated it for what it was. So yeah, Glass is a really good movie. Glengarry Glen Ross, it's, on paper, you know, listening to guys yell about selling real estate is not the most interesting thing in the world, but the great thing is that you've got all these great actors like Al Pacino, Jack Lemmon, Alec Baldwin, Ed Harris, Christopher Plummer in this movie, and yeah, it's just really solid writing. And of course, The Godfather, the trilogy. I'm really not that big a fan of Godfather 2, to be honest with you. Godfather 3 is pretty good, but for me, I can watch The Godfather every single Sunday. It is just a watchable movie. You can just sit down, kind of like let the thing wash over you, and it is just cinematic perfection. So yeah, any film fan, I really think you should have this. I've got the original Godzilla from 1954, and I've got the updated Godzilla from 2014. I've yet to see this one. I like this one okay. I definitely like King of the Monsters better. I'm just waiting for a good price on King of the Monsters. But yeah, I'm interested in kind of expanding my kaiju experience. Dude, this movie did not make me want to get married anytime soon. Gone Girl is creepy as fuck. And Rosamund Pike was robbed of an Academy Award win because she is terrifying in this movie. Just this weird mystery about, like, where did this guy's wife go, and did he kill her? Who knows? This movie's great. Speaking of great movies, Goodfellas, Martin Scorsese. It's Daniel, Martin Scorsese's favorite director. Martin Scorsese is Daniel's favorite director, so, you know, this movie is just, you gotta have it. It's like prime Scorsese. I was gifted The Good German from Steven Soderbergh. I don't really know what this is, but it looks cool. So, I like Steven Soderbergh movies. I'll definitely give this a shot someday. Good Morning Vietnam. Great comedy. I still gotta watch it. But, you know, it's one of those movies that everybody says you gotta watch, so I'm gonna watch it. Good Night and Good Luck. This movie is great. A cool journalism movie. Again, it's got like Robert Downey Jr. and Jeff Daniels and George Clooney and Patricia Clarkson in it. A bunch of great people in this film. and David Strathairn as what is it? What's his name? Shit. Edward R. Murrow during the McCarthy era of communism, you know, fighting the sort of like public debate battle on TV. This movie is just, it just nails it. It's one of the best movies of the 2000s. Good Will Hunting. I have yet to see it, but I have it because it's one of those movies. You know what movie I have seen instead of this? Goosebumps. I saw this with my family, and you know what? It's not that bad. It's a fun kids movie. Grand Budapest Hotel, Wes Anderson movie. I think this was the first Wes Anderson movie I watched, and it's really well done. It's like this pop-up storybook of like this weird, quirky set of characters come to life, and it's just enjoyable. I can't really explain it much other than that, but it's kind of like, yeah, turn on this movie, imagine you're in a storybook, and just let yourself go for the ride. Alfonso Cuarón comes back in Gravity. Good movie. It's not the greatest movie in the world, but it holds a special place in my heart. I really love Baz Luhrmann, and I really love The Great Gatsby. I know it's all style. I think the style is the substance in this case, and Carey Mulligan's entrance in this movie is the best entrance I've ever seen in any movie. It is just perfection. I don't know why we have this. My wife bought this, I think, as a combo pack. We've yet to see it. It is 177 minutes. I don't know why we have it. Great Los Angeles Earthquake. Dude, this movie is badass. If you like punk rock, if you like horror, you're gonna like this movie. If you like bottle films, if you like movies where the characters make the best decisions they have with what knowledge they have, this movie, it's honestly just perfect. And Patrick Stewart is fucking creepy in it. Required viewing, Gremlins, great kids movie, great Christmas movie. It's just, it's a really, really good movie. One of my favorite movies in the MCU, Guardians of the Galaxy. I think this is just kind of pitch perfect, Motley Crue kind of film with great characterization, and I don't know, I really, really like this one. Hail Caesar, I think, is underrated as a Coen Brothers movie. Maybe it's because I love that kind of 50s style, like I said earlier, but I think this movie is really funny. And if you're a fan of the Coen Brothers, I think there's no reason you shouldn't have fun with this. One of my favorite horror movies of all time, if not my favorite horror movie of all time, Halloween. The master, John Carpenter. He's the master of, like, slasher films and tension and atmosphere, and it's so good. And then, I have not seen Halloween 2 and Halloween 3, but I've heard these are probably the best sequels up until 2018's Halloween, which fucks so hard. This movie's amazing. I've yet to see these, but this movie's amazing. Oh, I can't wait for the new movie this year. Underrated, Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters. It's a super campy, kind of gory movie, but you know what? It's fun. And in like that era when we got a bunch of like fairy tales given dark versions, I think this one was the best because it didn't take itself that seriously. Speaking of not taking yourself that seriously, Happy Death Day has a star-making performance from Jessica Roth. I think we're going to talk about her in the same way that we talk about like Jamie Lee Curtis or Heather Langenkamp or Neve Campbell from Scream. Just like perfect like female performances in horror. And this movie's hilarious. This movie's got it's got a good sense of humor about it, but really what makes this thing pop is Jessica Roth's performance. I think she's so full of energy. Speaking of being full of energy, Hardcore Henry rules. This movie is underrated as hell. It's basically like playing an FPS. It's like watching an FPS game. And I know for some people that might cause motion sickness, but I thought this movie had such a great sense of humor and so much like propulsion, and it was just so much full of fun and action. It's not the most complicated movie in the world, but it doesn't need to be. I think it was just a really, really well-made action film. And of course, what collection is complete without the entire Harry Potter series? Prisoner of Azkaban is the best. Alfonso Cuarón movie. Kind of makes sense why I love it so much. Back to Tarantino with The Hateful Eight. I saw this one on the Road Show, the one where they gave you the little book and the intermission. It was in 35mm. It's a really cool version of this, and I really like it. I know some people don't. I know it's kind of like really undervalued in his discography, but I had a really good time with it. I have yet to see Heat, but this is apparently one of the best movies ever made, and I found it for $3 at Best Buy, so I had to grab it. And to finish off this stack, we've got Hell or High Water. Oh my god, one of the best movies of the decade. If you want a great chase movie, if you want a great Eat the Rich type of movie, or like a bandit film, a neo-western that kind of feels like a Coen Brothers movie, this movie is right up your alley. Perfect performances, perfect cinematography, perfect score by Nick Cave. Just, oh my god, it's perfection. And to finish off the stack, we've got Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy. I think Hellboy 2 is better. I've yet to have it because I want that special steelbook, but Hellboy, oh my god, that movie just... It's one of those movies when I was a kid, I was like, you can do this? Like, what is this? This is kind of great. Really creepy sci-fi stuff in here too. Let me move. Oh my god. We're almost done with this stack. I've still got like a bunch of other stacks left. I told you this is a long ass video. Bear with me. I really like Hellraiser. It is gory, it is crude, it is like reprehensible in all senses of the term, but I really, really like it in a sick, sadistic way. Going back to Spike Jonze, honestly, Scarlett Johansson should have gotten the Academy Award for this one. I think her performance was extraordinary, and it really kind of made me believe and question, you know, how do we create those connections in our lives? Can we fall in love with a computer? This movie kind of makes me think that we can. Hercules, classic film from my childhood. Let me show you something real quick. I have had this commemorative McDonald's plate since 1997. I had to tape it because it broke in the microwave after so many uses, but I cannot get myself to get rid of it. So yeah, Hercules is one of those movies for me. Hereditary, creepy as hell, the debut feature of Ari Aster. It started my love affair with Toni Collette. And man, this movie is killer. It's almost too tension building for its own good, but I think the payoffs are really, really good in this one. History of the World, Part 1, one of my favorite comedies of all time. Watched this when I was like 12, and this movie just made me laugh my ass off, and I really wish there was a Part 2. And then you've got Robin Hood Men in Tights, which is an equally hilarious Mel Brooks movie. Not as good, I think, but it's a fun, different kind of parody. Again, I really like both films. Mel Brooks is one of my favorite comedic directors. I think Hitchcock is really underrated. I don't hear many people talking about it, but Anthony Hopkins is great in this. Again, Scarlett Johansson good in this. I did not know Toni Collette was in this, but now she is. Michael Stuhlbarg is in this. Man, people I really, really respect and like. But yeah, you know, Alfred Hitchcock biopic with Anthony Hopkins in the middle. How can you really ever go wrong? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is one of my wife's movies. I've seen it. It didn't really stick with me that much, but, you know, I'll give it another shot. I just remembered the android. I actually really like the Hobbit movies. I think I like the first one and the second one. The third one's ass. I have yet to grab the second one, but this first one I think has really good atmosphere to it. And, yeah, it's not the best movie in the world. It doesn't really compare to Lord of the Rings, but I don't really think it had to that much. So, Hobo with a Shotgun. I was either falling asleep or drunk watching this, so I know we put it on. I don't remember anything about it, which just means I have to watch it again. Rutger Hauer, rest in peace. We watched Homeward Bound the other day, and it's goofy as hell, but I like it. We haven't seen Homeward Bound 2 yet, so, you know, I'll see what's up with it, but I liked Homeward Bound. I also like the fact that, like, once the pets, like, reunite with a family, the credits just roll. Like, we all know, like, are they gonna get back together with the family? They got back together with the family, boom, movie ends. Like, let's just take us out. Wasting no time, Disney. I love it. One of the Hammer Dracula movies starring Christopher Lee as Dracula. I have yet to see Horror of Dracula, but again, it's one of those movies, like, it's directed by Hammer, and it's produced by Hammer, directed by Terrence Fisher. This movie's gotta be good. I saw this in a local store. This movie is Hotel Rwanda. But I had to grab this collection because it reminds me of my youth, going to Blockbuster and renting movies. Like, this is the kind of thing I needed to have. In Hotel Rwanda, it's a really tough movie. It's a great Don Cheadle performance, and that movie's powerful. I guess, really, I just grabbed it because of, like, this casing. I just needed a reminder, a blast from the past. House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects. I am not a fan of House of a Thousand Corpses. I am a fan of Devil's Rejects. I think Devil's Rejects is just a little bit more refined. There's something more interesting going on in it, and that movie is really killer. So, yeah. Kind of a mixed bag in this collection. I'm pretty sure I fell asleep during Howl's Moving Castle. The only Studio Ghibli movie I will comfortably say I've ever seen is Ponyo, because I don't really remember what happened in this movie. But I remember when I watched this movie, it looked pretty good. I've yet to see The Howling, but this was recommended as, like, a good werewolf movie directed by Joe Dante, and so he directed Gremlins. This movie's gotta be good, right? Hugo. I've yet to finish this movie. I watched 2/3 of it. I'm a big Martin Scorsese fan, but I don't know why. This movie hasn't quite grabbed me yet. I probably need to rewatch it. Hush is not the movie about the deaf lady who is being stalked by a killer. This is something else that I just grabbed randomly. I've yet to see it. It's a thriller horror thing, so yeah, I'll watch it at some point. Hustlers was robbed of a sound mixing nomination at this year's Academy Awards. I think this movie is fantastic. It's kind of like a Scorsese contemporary that really has its own identity and gets everything right. I really like Constance Wu's arc in this. I love Jennifer Lopez's performance even more the second time than I did the first time. This movie, if you're looking for a really funny yet emotional crime drama, this movie's really good. I, Tonya, this is the Margot Robbie, like, superstar maker. Like, if Wolf of Wall Street was her entrance, this made her a superstar. It's her best performance ever, and this movie is it's just great, honestly. Takashi Miike is back with Ichi the Killer, this great, like, messed up gangster horror tinted mystery / thriller. Like, it's such a crazy ride, and if you're into, like, really crazy messed up movies, Ichi the Killer is required viewing. In Time, interesting concept. I'm not the biggest Justin Timberlake fan as an actor, but this is a pretty cool, like, concept. You know, instead of money, you have time, and you can buy it, you can sell it, you can gain a crap ton more years of it. You know, it's a kind of cool idea. Incarnate is not a good movie, but I really dig it. You know why? Because Aaron Eckhart is awesome. And I think this takes a different look at demonic possession in a way that I had never really seen before. Again, it's not the greatest movie in the world, but you know what? It's really charming in its own, like, doofy way. The Incredible Hulk. This movie is stupid. It is so stupid. It is Marvel's black sheep. It is like Marvel throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. But there's, like, a fond affection I have for this movie just because it's so weird and does try throwing everything at the wall. Yeah, sure, I like it. It's fine. The Incredibles and Incredibles 2, one of the best movies I've ever seen. A really decent, like, good follow-up to a movie that I thought couldn't really be followed up at all. Yeah, Incredibles 2 is, like, more solid than we really give it credit for. Oh, look, crap. Stack fell over. Oh, God. I'm just gonna start throwing stuff up. Oh god, look at this noise. I'm just gonna move some stuff around real quick. Do you hear this? To the side of me. I'm legitimately worried that this is gonna bump into the camera. Anyway, Independence Day, fantastic movie. It is not a good movie, but by God, if you do not cry whenever Bill Pullman gives the speech at the end of the movie to rally us to fight the aliens, you, my friend, have no fucking soul. Back to Tarantino with Inglourious Basterds. I'm not really a big fan of the first third of this movie, but whenever Mike Myers and Michael Fassbender kick in, I think this movie is great. I might have to rewatch this just to give it another go, but I don't know. It's a good movie still, but it's not like my favorite Tarantino. I really love Inherent Vice. Paul Thomas Anderson is one of those guys that, like, whenever he makes a movie, I just love it. And this movie with Joaquin Phoenix and Catherine Waterston in it as, like, this old school kind of detective story. And Josh Brolin is hilarious as the cop who might be gay. Who's, like, heavily suggested that he's gay, but he, like, is so, like, butch and manly, man. It's such good stuff. I really, really dig this movie. And I know a lot of people think it's kind of aimless and pointless, but that's kind of the point. I don't know. It's a great movie. One of my favorite movies of the decade, Inside Llewyn Davis, directed by the Coen brothers. It is a perfect exploration of self-destruction and depression, and it's just one of those movies that I will forever treasure in my heart. Oscar Isaac, we're going to talk about this the same way we talk about Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver or Raging Bull, I promise. Interstellar, look at this steelbook. Mind-bendy, twisty. This is like taking place where 2001 left off, and I really like this movie. I have a fondness for Invincible. I saw it a while back when I was a kid, and I like Mark Wahlberg, and I liked, you know, the kind of Philly spirit. And yeah, I think it's a good movie. Solid sports film. I've yet to see this, but I will see this before I see the new Invisible Man that comes out this week. Yeah, this is The Invisible Man, starring Claude Rains as the guy, and directed by James Whale, who also did the original Frankenstein. One of my all-time favorite movies. I had to get a perfect version of this, the Steelbook for the Iron Giant. It is just a perfect A Boy and His Blank movie, and this is better than this is the best thing Brad Bird has ever done. Period. Point blank. Again, if you don't cry at the end of this movie, you have absolutely no soul. Speaking of having no soul, Irreversible. Yeah, Gaspar Noé directed this. Oh my god, on the back of this, it just says Noé. How douchey can you get? I didn't want to say, well, you know, Gaspar Noé is a douchebag, but he's a douchebag that makes good movies. I'm kind of worried about watching this, because there's that infamous, like, 8-minute rape scene that goes on in this movie. I'm gonna have to eventually approach this one with some caution. This one is kind of cool because of the cover. This is Wes Anderson's Isle of Dogs, the one about, you know, the dogs that are trapped on an island because the government has propagated that they have, like, this crazy disease that's going to kill them all. But then this kid of a dignitary in Japan goes over to find his long-lost dog. It's really good stuff. If you like Wes Anderson's art direction, if you like the kind of, what's it called? If you like his framing, if you like his production design, if you like the way he builds a world, and if especially you like something like Fantastic Mr. Fox, Isle of Dogs is really, really good. And it's got a great cast. I mean, Bryan Cranston will break your heart in this. And then we've got both versions of It. I've actually not seen this version, but the It I'm not the biggest fan of. I got this one from my wife because she really liked the first It. We watched It Chapter 2. She didn't like that one. I kind of did, but I still wasn't great on it. This movie just kind of seems boring to me. It doesn't really hold a lot of fuel. Once you get that big haunted house sequence in the second act of this movie, the movie kind of like falls flat for me. But, you know, Stephen King can't write an ending to save his life, can he? This movie is underrated as hell. It comes at night. I think if people just embraced what this movie was instead of what they thought this movie would be, this would work really well. It's kind of like A Quiet Place if you really delved into, like, the decay of the human psyche, and this movie is really, really good. Speaking of really, really good movies, one of the best horror movies of the decade is It Follows. This movie, like, takes the inspiration from Carpenter and it kind of twists the slasher genre, the stalker genre, and it gives it, like, this weird metaphor for sexual assault and how that identity will stick to someone. It's also, in a weird way, about, like, David Robert Mitchell's decay of Detroit and the decay of innocence and childhood. And yeah, this movie just works on a bunch of levels. Yeah, Jack Frost. Not the creepy snowman one. Well, not the deliberate horror movie Snowman. Michael Keaton is a father who dies and is reincarnated into the body of a snowman. And it's a kid's movie. Creepiest version of Frosty the Snowman in the world. But I think it's pretty good. I like Michael Keaton. I really like Pablo Larraín's Jackie. I think it's a different way to do a biopic. It's kind of embodying the spirit of somebody instead of, like, the kind of history lesson timeline of what their life was. And this movie is just a really good... It says on the back here, that David Rooney quote, "a remarkably raw portrait of the iconic American First Lady." That word, portrait, I think is a really good way to describe this movie. If you haven't seen it, I mean... Natalie Portman is just perfect in this. My wife loves this movie. We put on like 5 minutes of it, and I just can't stand it. I'm sorry. I just can't. It's like got this Mean Girls vibe, but it's like too dark, and just, I don't know. And then we're going to end off this stack with a really cool version of Jaws. This is the Blu-ray, but it's dressed up in a VHS case, and I just like really cool things like this where we can... You know, if I'm gonna have a really classic movie, I really want to show this to my kids in a classic way, you know? And we're finishing the last stack of this half of the DVDs. I'm going to give myself a tiny break after this to drink some water, because I've been talking for like an hour and almost an hour and a half, but we're going to blitz through this here. Jennifer's Body, directed by Karen Kusama. Megan Fox was given so much shit from Hollywood unnecessarily, and I think this movie is so wickedly smart and feminist and just fun. You know, this movie is a great genre film, and Karen Kusama deserves everything in the world. I really, really love this movie. John Wick, I mean, what can you say, man? Keanu at his absolute best. This movie has not been topped. Juno, I saw in a double feature with Pulp Fiction of all things, and I don't think I've laughed that hard in the middle of the night ever. I really love this movie, so tender. Da 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 da. It's one of the best half-engine movies ever. I watched this 4 times in theaters. It is not a good movie, but I kind of love it. I kind of love this one even more, even though it's really stupid. I love Justice League. I think the Joss Whedon changes were perfect. I think there's so much wonderful interaction between the superheroes in this. Everything with Superman post, like, the weird bit in the movie where he's evil is just glorious to me, and I really want another movie in the vein of this. It's just this warm hour and a half, like 2-hour long Saturday morning cartoon, and it's just perfect for the thing in my heart. Saw this on Red Letter Media's Best of the Worst. I've yet to see it, but, I mean, it was like $1. I couldn't help myself. Alright, my favorite Tarantino movies. I would say my very favorite of the Kill Bill series would probably be Volume 1. Just a bunch of my favorite moments in the movie are in this film. But Kill Bill Volume 2 is almost equally as good and full of great moments. Uma Thurman is perfect. This exploration of motherhood and what you would do to, get revenge, righteous revenge. It's one of the best revenge movies ever made. And this movie makes me cry, like weep heavy twice in the series. And this movie's so good. It's like Tarantino and all of his influences riding on like a perfect wave. Even though it's choppy and kind of messy, it's just this perfect wave. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, some of the best special effects of the 80s. Don't at me, this movie is required viewing. King Kong from 1933, a classic. It's just a classic. Watch it if you haven't. You know what's really good? I actually really like King Kong 2005. And with this is The Mummy from 1999, which is a movie directed by Stephen Sommers that I actually really like. And then The Scorpion King, which I got really plastered in my old apartment and watched. That movie does not hold up, but it's kind of great. And Van Helsing, you know what? That movie is... There's no such thing as a guilty pleasure, but I feel like it fits in that category. I really enjoy Van Helsing as cheesy and as, like... This is the Dark Universe. This is what the Dark Universe should have been. Van Helsing. Just make more movies like Van Helsing. Oh my god. Okay, one of the coolest new discoveries I've had in the last couple years. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Directed by Shane Black. It is the movie that got Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man. Jon Favreau watched this with Kevin Feige, and they slowly brought themselves to think, what if we cast him as Tony Stark? And such a legend was born. This is a great detective buddy movie, and it's just a mixture of like Pulp Fiction with that detective stuff, with a bunch of Shane Black-isms, and Michelle Monaghan is glorious in this film. Again, it's another of Shane Black's like fuck yous to LA, and it's such a well-made, cool, slick version of that. This is required viewing. Kong Skull Island. It is not a great movie, but this movie holds a special place in my heart because 5 minutes before I watched a giant gorilla break up a fight between baby John C. Reilly and a Japanese soldier, I proposed to my wife in the middle of a movie theater. This movie has a special place in my heart. It's not great, but, I love it. A movie I unabashedly love, though, Krampus, directed by Michael Dougherty, who also directed Trick or Treat. It's coming up on this list. But man, if this movie doesn't have, like, the weird, just kinda... This is like Gremlins with just a little bit more edge. And man, this movie is killer and weird and naughty. And just, I really love it. This is Christmas required viewing for me. Coup and the Two Strings is my favorite Laika movie, and it is the one that made me weep twice. It's the one that blended CG with stop motion in a way that just took my breath away. Just watching how this movie is made is like a masterclass in filmmaking, and I think this movie balances all of that in this wonderfully emotional story. I love the character of Kubo. I love kind of the sorrow that he feels, but like there's like a bittersweet joy in all of it. Oh my god, this movie just brings all the feels in the best way. I've yet to see LA Confidential. Actually, no, I saw the first 5 minutes of LA Confidential, and I really liked it. I was in college, but then the class ended, and I haven't seen the rest, but I want to see the rest based on the first 5 minutes. I am not a big fan of La La Land, but I appreciate it for the technicals more than I do the story and the romance. So, yeah, I might have to rewatch this again. Plus, that cover is really gorgeous. Coming of age movies. Lady Bird. It's one of the best of the decade. Like, watch Lady Bird. It's really good. The Last Exorcism is like this weird found footage exorcism movie that's not great. I kind of like part 2 better. And it's also, like, fun to think, like, oh, this is found footage, but then Caleb Landry Jones pops in, the guy from The Brother in Get Out, and he's also in Florida Project and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. And, yeah, he pops in, and I was like, oh, you're an actor! I know you! This movie's not great, but whatever. So this movie is Lean on Pete. I think it's a horse movie starring Charlie Plummer. I forgot to watch it, so I ended up accidentally buying it for, like, way over the asking price from Redbox. But similar to, like, Hotel Rwanda, this is gonna be, like, a nice little remnant to show my kids in the future. I have yet to see it, by the way. Lego Batman movie is so good! It's one of the best Batman movies ever made. Like, a Batman movie that really understands the character. And if you're a lover of DC, this movie is required viewing. So, it goes to show the Lego movie. I have it. I was surprised as everybody else was. I was kind of dragged to the screening. I thought it was going to be stupid. I fell in love with it like everybody else did. Robbed of an Academy Award. One of the best new vampire movies, and I really need a new case for this. This is broken. Holy crap. Let the Right One In, directed by Thomas Alfredson. This movie it reinvents the notion of the vampire in a brand new way, and it's just mesmerizing to watch from beginning to end. Great child performances in this, but, you know, it doesn't sacrifice on, like, the blood and the gore and all the stuff we like. The newest selection we have, my wife picked this out. Liar Liar. I've never seen this movie, though I saw so many reports about it in Entertainment Weekly when I was a child. I don't know why I'm mentioning that. This movie has a connection to childhood, but I just have never seen it. Life of Pi. This movie is glorious. This is a movie that completely knocked my socks off when I watched it, and it's just, it's like sitting in your grandmother's house when you're a kid and listening to her tell this amazing, fantastical story that you just can't believe is real, but it is. It's just classic, and it's beautifully told, so emotional, and is as specific as, like, a guy trapped on a sailboat with a tiger, but as expansive as talking about God, the universe, and existence. And this is Ang Lee's, like, oh my god, this movie's amazing. The Lion King. I mean, it's The Lion King. You kind of gotta have this one, you know, they're self-explanatory. Little Miss Sunshine. I'm noticing in my collection that I have way more Toni Collette movies than I thought, which is kind of great. Little Miss Sunshine is just one of those that I sat down as recommendation from my wife and her roommates at the time, and this movie just knocked my socks off. I think it's absolutely perfect. Live, Die, Repeat, what should have been the title for Edge of Tomorrow. I haven't seen this movie yet. I will. I promise I will. I hear it's really good. I'm a Yorgos Lanthimos fan, and the first movie that I saw was The Lobster, this really weird anti-romance movie about the society where, like, if you aren't married, then you get sent to this resort, and if you don't find love in 45 days, they turn you into an animal of your choosing. Colin Farrell's animal of his choosing is a lobster. This movie's really weird. This movie's really dark and kind of scary if you think about it, but in that is some, like, great comedy, and it kind of alleviates everything. Plus, you got a great cast. I mean, John C. Reilly, Rachel Weisz, Colin Farrell. I mean, come on. I really love Locke. This movie starts out with a guy who's going home from work, but instead of taking a right, he takes a left. And the whole movie takes place with Tom Hardy in this car realizing why he decided not to go home that night from work. And the reasons why are, like, it's great drama. A lot of the interaction with other characters is just done through, like, a phone, a car phone, and Tom Hardy talking to himself, and there's so much drama and, like, craziness that's in this movie, and at the very end you kind of realize that his story is just one of millions of stories whenever we're, like, stuck in our little cars driving wherever we're going. We each have our own stories to tell, and it's really weirdly humanizing and it just kind of comforts my heart to watch this one, even though it's really tense and dramatic. But yeah, if you haven't seen this one, or Bronson, these are the best Tom Hardy performances ever. Logan. I mean, it's Logan. You gotta kind of love it. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of, like, the third act, the whole, like, Logan Beyond Thunderdome with the little kids, but this movie is just, it's solid. It's a James Mangold movie, and I like James Mangold. Going back to Lone Survivor, what really struck me about this one was just the emotion in it. You know, this isn't your typical, like, oorah, like, war movie, even though it is, and it is deeply patriotic. It really gets to the heart of what it's like to be a human stuck in these terrible situations. And Lone Survivor is just a really solid, tense movie. The first of the Berg trilogy. I mean, you knew it was coming. Catch me on any single day, I will tell you that this Lord of the Rings movie is best. No, this one's the best. No, this one's the best. Right now, I'm going to say Two Towers is the best because it has some of my favorite things in the trilogy. You know, you got Gollum, and you got the trees, and you got Saruman, and you got that speech that Sam gives about finding the good in the world that makes me cry every single time. But yeah, Lord of the Rings, it's one of the best stories ever told. Lords of Chaos rules. If you like black metal, if you like really dark movies, but if you also like movies that don't take themselves that seriously, I think this movie's fantastic. It's got Rory Culkin in it, Emery Cohen, who I think should have gotten a Best Supporting Actor, at least nom. I think that guy's really good in the movie. I love his arc. And yeah, if you're just kind of like interested in a little bit of history, a little bit of horror, a little bit of black metal, and a little bit of comedy, and a lot of crime and a lot of messed up stuff, this movie's just like an all-in-one encompassing package. It's really good. Ah, another one bites the dust! I keep getting attacked by my DVDs. The Lords of Salem. My wife really likes this movie. It's kind of like Rob Zombie's version of Rosemary's Baby, and I'm not really a big fan of it, but my wife likes it, and it's decent enough. I kind of dig it. I really love Simon. Again, coming-of-age movies, I think this one works in the same way that, oh my god, more movies are falling over. I think this movie works in the same way that a bunch of movies like this should work. It's just a really solid film. It's not many frills. I love the characters. I love the comedy. I love how it relates to modern day while being relatable to everybody's experience with falling in love and being awkward and all that. So yeah, this movie just gets everything right and gets none of it wrong. Great movie. Also, this started the thing of like queer relationships and Ferris wheels. If there's like a symbol to that I don't know about, somebody let me know in the comments. I had stayed up till 7 in the morning the night before watching a 9 a.m. screening of Macbeth, and they have heavy Scottish accents. I did not have subtitles, but yet this movie is shot gorgeously. It's directed by Justin Kurzel, who unfortunately followed this up with Assassin's Creed, which legitimately put me to sleep. But this movie is just pure cinema. Like, if you wanted Marion Cotillard and Michael Fassbender to do Macbeth, then this is probably the best version you're probably ever gonna get. Speaking of Mad Max, I'm not really a big fan of Mad Max 1, but I like The Road Warrior, and I like Beyond Thunderdome because it's kind of ridiculous and inspires everything in front of it. And then, of course, Mad Max Fury Road, directed by George Miller. Who else improves upon his best movie, like, 20 years later after doing it? It's crazy, mate. It's just crazy. Crikey. Paul Thomas Anderson. I've yet to see Magnolia, but I love Paul Thomas Anderson. Ergo, I am going to get Magnolia and watch it eventually. I heard this movie is really, really weird and has a great Tom Cruise performance. Dude, if you like Guy Ritchie movies, this is my favorite Guy Ritchie movie by far, and I think the action and the motion and the score and the characters and the performances. Oh my god, this is the best Henry Cavill's ever been. This is where I fell in love with Elizabeth Debicki. I love Alicia Vikander in this, Armie Hammer. Their relationship is like so cute in a weird, like, antagonistic way. I just love everything about this movie. It's one of my favorite spy movies, and it made me, like, leave the screening driving 85 miles an hour thinking I was gonna go save the world. It's such a good movie. Manchester by the Sea is a really heavy movie. It's a really good movie, but it's one of those where you gotta be prepared to deal with some really tough feelings. It is very good, though. I recommend you watch this. Lucas Hedges is fantastic. Casey Affleck deserved the Oscar win. The Martian! When I was working at the movie theater, I would walk in on this movie while I was doing theater checks, and this is one of those movies that I can literally walk in at every moment and just be stuck in it, because I think the story itself is so interesting, and I can just follow Matt Damon trying to survive on Mars, no matter what point of the story he's actually in. I think this movie is really, really solid. It's one of my favorites of, like, the kind of, like, sci-fi space exploration boom that we had in the last couple years of the decade. And to finish off this half of the list, before I take a break and drink some well-needed water, another Paul Thomas Anderson movie I have not seen but I need to, The Master. This is apparently the movie that Joaquin Phoenix should have gotten the Oscar for. I still need to see it. I hear this is, like, messed up in the best way, with great performances from Philip Seymour Hoffman and Amy Adams. And yeah, it's a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. What's not to love? So, I'm going to take a break and drink some water. You're not going to notice it because I'm going to snap my fingers and do a cut. But once I cut, all the movies that are over there are going to be over here, and we're going to wrap this sucker up. So, I'll see y'all in a bit.